Chapter 9. The Guardians. I was finally alone, but it took me a while longer before my heart and breathing had slowed, and I was able to take count of where I was. When I did, I found myself in a labyrinth of narrow alleys, with towering walls either side that dominated the space. I listened to see if I could ascertain anything, but there was a silence that seemed to encase everything. There were no footsteps, no horses, no bustle, nothing. I carefully eyed every inch of the gloomy ochre lane that led back to another seemingly identical one, which led to yet more of the same. There was nothing, no definable landmarks to navigate by, and no unique details to even remember it by. I wondered if people even lived here, or indeed what the point of such a warren was. I had no choice but to keep moving forwards and to hope that I would eventually find a more discernible street around the next corner. But each corner took me to an equally unremarkable alley, and deeper into anxiety about being truly lost. On and on I pushed, till eventually I turned into a new lane, much like all the others, except it was not empty and not deserted. I stood still, tall but tired. Blocking the exit on the other end was a figure, dressed in a bright uniform. My mind ran wild, wrestling with the urge to turn and run, or to find out who it was. Maybe they could help me. After all, they did have a uniform. I wasn't sure how much further I could go, and pondered if I turned would I meet anyone else. I decided to stand tall, be brave, and face the figure. I boldly strode down the claustrophobic alley, till I could get a good look at the mysterious uniform. On closer inspection, I noticed the figure was female, and was wearing an elaborate blue crisply pressed uniform, adorned with golden stripes of rank. She smiled at me with a calculated degree of warmth, her eyebrow raised in a constant look of curiosity. Suddenly she brought her feet smartly together, the buffed, glimmering boots gently tapping. She slightly adjusted her helmet, ensuring it was absolutely straight. Then she put on a finely framed pair of glasses and proceeded to unravel a cream scroll. "Do you belong to the library workhouse?" she asked, in a crisp voice, her eyebrows still raised. I stepped back a little in fear. "Why do you ask?" I said, peering behind me nervously for an escape route. "Boolean answers only," the stern official said. "Answer, please." She knew who I was. Io had probably called the police or some other group of officials to catch me, I thought. My face felt suddenly very hot and the urge to run took over again. I turned in a flash and sped back down the alley the way I had come. Exiting it, I spontaneously took a right and dashed for another lane. As I entered it, though, I heard a faint chink and had to screech to a halt. In front of me, several paces further down, was the same woman, her eyebrow raised incrementally higher, and she frowned at me. "Good to see you again," she said as she unravelled the same scroll. "Now, do you belong to the library workhouse?" she inquired. Spotting a side alley, I made a dash for it, the looming walls either side a rare welcome sight. There was a soft chink, and standing at the bottom of the route was the very same identical official, her eyebrow still raised. Before she could even speak, I spun and darted back, hoping to outsmart her, but there was another chink, and there she was again. It didn't seem to matter which alley I took or how I scampered down it. She outsmarted me each and every time. I tried to work out how she was doing it, how she could navigate the warren of ways, and how she managed to get past me, arriving every time in front of me, but it completely eluded me. This game, This frightening and perplexing ordeal eventually forced me to give in and let her speak. She stood in front of me, the same look of total composure, not even a tiny hint of sweat on her brow. She rolled out the scroll again, reading it from behind those delicate glasses. "Good to see you back," a slight hint of inconvenience in her voice. "Do you belong to the library workhouse?" "Yes," I reluctantly replied. She plucked a fine pen from her top pocket, ticked off something on her scroll, and then read the next item. "Do you serve the customers?" "Yes," I said nonchalantly. She ticked a box with a little finesse. "Do you have permission to leave?" The word yes was my choice, but it refused to exit my mouth, despite it being my clear intention. Instead, I felt compelled to answer. I fought to try to stop that little word from getting free from my lips, but it was no use. "No," I blurted out. "Ah, I see," she said. "You do not meet the correct criteria. You must return." She took a few steps toward me. I started to panic and felt myself turning to run, but then her walk slowed, and her eyelids began to twitch and flutter. The scroll rustled, then she stopped, a blank look suddenly on her face. After a moment, she regained composure, lifted the scroll and began to read. "Are you Kentaro?" I took a step back in disbelief at what I had heard. "Sorry," I said. "Are you Kentaro?" "Yes," I tentatively said. "Do you wish to be free?" she crisply read. "I didn't know the meaning of the word till recently," I said spontaneously. "Boolean answers only," she stated, that eyebrow raised again. "Well, do you wish to be free?" Freedom, the thought, the concept, the notion evoked an eruption of feelings inside, desire burning brightly in my heart. Yes, of course, I wanted to be free. "Yes," I said with total conviction. "Then you may pass," the lady said reluctantly, and ticking a final box, she turned and walked off. I dashed after her to ask her if she might give me directions out of the maze of lanes, but she was gone, so I strode on, alley after alley, till it began to blend into one long, monotonous trudge. After how long, I can't say, but eventually I began to notice that although every lane I ventured down seemed identical, there was a single detail that seemed to change. It was almost unidentifiable at first, but the longer I went, the more it became discernible. At first, I recognized just a hint of difference in the silence. It seemed less intense, but then the further I went, the more the silence began to retreat and give way to a distant, almost inaudible tapping. Initially, I thought I was imagining the sound, but then it reached a point where I could no longer doubt it. It was there, and what's more, it sounded like footsteps. Footsteps that were getting louder, closer, and they were coming from both in front and behind. I dared not stop, trying to take side alleys to lose the rhythmic sound of its culprits. But no turn, double back, or dash forward changed the beat, and suddenly they were so loud that I knew they were coming from right behind me. I dared to look back and my heart sank. Cloaked, dark figures were on my tail, their cold eyes searing deep into me. A glee twisted their scarred faces as they closed the gap, till they were just a few strides away. They began to lash their whips, slashing blindly at me, dissolving everything they touched. Their loud screams echoed through my head, unraveling my memory. I struggled to keep moving forwards. If I could just get away and lose them again in these alleys, I thought. I ran a little harder, dashing around a corner with everything I had, only to come to a dead end. After all the lanes I had navigated and put up with aimlessly melding into each other, never-ending lanes, only to be caught and cut off by the only one so far that ended in a high wall. I momentarily burst out into an uncontrollable laugh, the sheer irony that was to be my demise. I rushed for the wall and turned to face my perpetrators. They slowly strolled down the alley, savouring the moment like cats having cornered a tired mouse. Smiles full of rotten yellow teeth, filed into points, erupted on their lined faces, their eyes full of glee. Step by step, they boomed closer to me. I felt the hard, cold stone bricks press into my back as I tried to back away. Whips lashed around, a chortle of excitement every time I flinched. They loomed closer, so close that a whip wouldn't miss, so close I could smell their fetid stench. They raised their whips, their eyes wide in excited expectation. "Extermination time," one said in a sing-song taunt. "I hope this one screams. I love it when they scream," he continued. "Or rips into pieces, flailing around in agony," the second said in a deeper voice. "I heard this one is for testing, not neutralization," a third said, arriving from nowhere. "They promised I could kill this one. Why testing?" the first replied with an utter disappointment. "Definitely testing, not killing. You don't want to anger the chief, do you?" the third asked. I noticed that the newcomer had a slight smile in the corner of her mouth as she watched the other two shudder at the thought of angering the chief. "All right," the first one muttered, reluctantly raising his whip. I shielded my face, ready for the blow, but instead my leg slipped, and the ground below me disappeared. I fell, watching the street disappear above me. Quickly, it turned to a small dot of light, then darkness, and still I fell. I don't know how long for, but falling became normal. Then, eventually, after what seemed like an eternity, I awoke in a sandy room.